Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that many people have strong feelings about: hell. For centuries, the idea of eternal conscious torment has been a central part of many Christian traditions. But what if there's another way to understand the biblical texts? What if the ultimate fate of the unsaved isn't endless suffering but something else entirely? Today we're exploring a theological perspective called annihilationism. So what exactly is annihilationism? Simply put, it's the belief that after the final judgment, those who are not saved will cease to exist. They won't suffer forever in a fiery pit. Instead, their consciousness, their very being, will be completely and permanently extinguished. This idea is also sometimes called conditional immortality, which means that immortality, living forever, is a gift from God given only to the righteous, not an inherent quality of every human soul. Now this might sound like a modern, watered-down version of traditional doctrine, but the roots of annihilationism go way back. You can find traces of this line of thinking in the writings of some early church figures and throughout history. It's not a new invention, but rather a stream of thought that has coexisted with the more dominant view of eternal torment for a very long time. So, where do supporters of this view get their ideas? Primarily from the Bible itself. Let us look at some of the language the scriptures use to describe the fate of the unrighteous. Words like destruction, perish, die, and being consumed or burned up are used frequently. For example, in Matthew 10:28, Jesus says, "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell." Annihilationists point to the word destroy here and argue it means a complete end, not ongoing torture. If something is destroyed, it no longer exists in its original form. Think about the imagery used in the Old Testament as well. In Psalm 37, the wicked are described as fading away like smoke or withering like grass. Malachi 4:1 says the wicked will be like stubble, and the day of judgment will set them ablaze, leaving them neither root nor branch. To an annihilationist, this language paints a picture of finality, of a complete end, not a state of perpetual suffering. It's the ultimate consequence, but it's a finite one. Another key argument revolves around the concept of death. The New Testament, particularly in the book of Romans, repeatedly states that the wages of sin is death. Annihilationists take this quite literally. They argue that death means the cessation of life. The second death, mentioned in the book of Revelation, is therefore understood as the final and irreversible end of existence for the unrighteous. If death just means separation from God while remaining conscious, they ask, why call it death at all? Why not just call it eternal suffering? The use of the word death, they contend, is very intentional and points towards a literal end. Let's also consider the nature and character of God. This is a big one for many who are drawn to annihilationism. The idea of a loving, just, and merciful God inflicting infinite, unending punishment for the finite sins of a lifetime is a profound theological problem for many people. How can infinite torment be considered a just punishment for, say, 80 years of wrongdoing? Proponents of annihilationism argue that extinguishing a life, while a severe and final judgment, is more consistent with a God of justice and love. It upholds God's holiness by eradicating sin completely, but it avoids the difficult moral questions raised by the concept of eternal conscious torment. Furthermore, they often point to the ultimate victory of God described in Scripture. Passages like 1 Corinthians 15 talk about a time when God will be all in all, and death, the last enemy, will be destroyed. Annihilationists ask, how can God be all in all if a significant portion of creation is forever locked in a state of rebellion and agony? And how can death truly be defeated if millions of people are experiencing a form of it for all eternity? For them, the only way for God's victory to be truly complete is for sin and rebellion to be utterly and finally eradicated from existence, not just quarantined in a corner of the universe forever. Of course, what about the passages that seem to clearly support eternal torment? This is where the debate gets really interesting. Let us talk about the big one, the lake of fire and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Annihilationists have responses for these as well. When it comes to imagery like the unquenchable fire mentioned by Jesus in Mark 9, they argue that unquenchable doesn't mean eternally burning. Rather, it means a fire that cannot be put out until it has completely consumed whatever it was sent to burn. Think of a real-world fire. If a building is on fire and the firefighters can't stop it, we'd say it's an unquenchable fire. But eventually the fire goes out once there's nothing left to burn. In the same way, they suggest the fire of judgment is unquenchable in its work of destruction, but the result is ashes, not an eternally burning person. Then there's the famous passage in Revelation 20, which says, "The devil, the beast, and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire, and will be tormented day and night forever and ever." This seems like a slam dunk for eternal torment. However, annihilationists offer a couple of interpretations. Some argue that this specific fate is reserved only for these symbolic, supernatural figures of evil, not for human beings in general. Others point out that the book of Revelation is highly symbolic. Just a few verses later, it says that death and Hades are also thrown into the lake of fire. Since death and Hades are abstract concepts, not conscious beings, being thrown into the lake of fire must mean their destruction and final end. Therefore, when people are thrown in, it means the same thing for them: complete destruction. And what about the weeping and gnashing of teeth? Annihilationists typically see this as the terror and anguish of people as they face their final judgment and realize the horror of their impending destruction, not as a description of their eternal state. It's the process of judgment, the moments before the end, that are filled with this regret and pain. Ultimately, annihilationism presents a picture of the end times where God's justice is final and absolute. Sin is punished with the ultimate penalty, the forfeiture of life itself. God's creation is eventually cleansed of all rebellion and evil, allowing God to truly be all in all. It offers a solution to some of the most difficult moral and theological questions posed by the traditional view of hell, while its supporters argue, staying true to the biblical text. Now, it's crucial to understand that this is a complex theological topic, with sincere Bible-believing Christians on all sides of the issue. Whether you believe in eternal torment, annihilationism, or another view, the biblical call to follow Christ remains the same. This isn't about minimizing the consequences of sin, but about trying to understand exactly what the Bible teaches those consequences are. I hope this has given you a clear and helpful overview of annihilationism. It's a fascinating perspective that challenges many traditional assumptions. What are your thoughts on this? Does this view make more sense to you, or do you find the traditional view more compelling? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks so much for watching today. If you found this video thought-provoking and want to explore more topics like this, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. We'll see you in the next video.